episode is sponsored by Teamhood, a modern project management system. Hello everyone, we're here on the Agile Couch. First time we're doing a video in English, our podcast in English. We figured that it could be a good idea because we have a lot of English-speaking people and Agile enthusiasts in Lithuania. We're still trying to keep it to our market. We'll see how this will go, so please react. Tell us in the comments, how do you feel? Should we do more English videos or should we stick to Lithuanian? Otherwise, today we hope to have really exciting conversation. We have Lowell Edward Smith Jr., aka Eddie, here on the Agile Couch. Eddie is Kaunas site lead for a company called Komponent, and today we're gonna talk probably about a bunch of stuff, but we said we will focus on the pushbacks and how to handle the pushbacks whenever you want to transition to Agile, and what basically kind of pushbacks you can get, right? So first of all, hi. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Really great to see. We were working with Eddie some years ago as coaches in the same company. So really exciting to catch up and see how the journey. So maybe you can very quickly just introduce yourself, your experience.
Yeah.
How are things here in Lithuania lately?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I am an American citizen, and I've been living here in Lithuania for 3 years now. And I was an Agilist there. I started out actually my career as a software engineer and did development in Java and C++ and Visual Basic .NET and some different things. And then transitioned into kind of more management roles. But I really found my sweet spot in the Agile practice. And so I came to Lithuania and worked where we worked together and got to really kind of concentrate on that and really develop those skills more.
Yeah. But now you're back in the management.
Yeah, I'm kind of back. I wear a lot of different hats now, and I'm in a smaller organization now. I'm not in a large enterprise. Our Component is around 50 employees, primarily here in Lithuania and in Norway. And so I do some sales. I do a lot of Agile practice, even though I don't wear an Agile title anymore. And then I do recruiting and a lot of running the office kind of thing. So it's a lot more comprehensive of a role that I'm in now.
Okay, that sounds exciting.
But I do use a lot of the Agile principles that I used. I mean, I use them every day. That's part of my life now. So some of these things I use, even though we don't call it, Agile practice or Agile mindset. So.
Exactly. Sometimes it's not about using the names or the titles. It's just living the value, the mindset, basically. All right. So pushbacks, right? Yeah. Probably through your long years of experience in the software engineering teams, managing them, coaching them. You've seen pushbacks there and there.
Right.
I will start with the question: why usually people, organizations, teams tend to push back this change, this transformation to Agile, its practices, and so on?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is you hit the nail on the head. It's about change, right? So we as humans are kind of averse to change. So one thing that I found effective, especially now that I'm back kind of in more of a sales kind of a role and development, is really anchoring that to something they know. So in the old days, like in traditional project management, they would anchor. They knew what a project manager was, right? Yeah. So even if you're out on LinkedIn and you see job advertisements, they want a Scrum Master that's a project manager. That's a red flag for me, that they might not understand kind of the Agile mindset and if they equate, but that's what they know, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of that pushback is around the unknown. So I found a lot of the job, especially as you're out on the very front end of an engagement for a transformation or an Agile adoption, is a lot around this education piece and getting it familiar with people, how they get the information that they used to get. So, and instead of the steering committees and things that they used to get their information from, this is how we do it in an Agile way. You're still going to get this information. You're still going to be comfortable about the decisions, but it's just a slightly different way, and the way of working is a little different. Yeah, but that pushback, I think, primarily just comes from that change and not anchoring that with something that's kind of known to them. It's kind of nebulous and unknown, I think.
So basically uncomfortable with the new things, with the new ways. So let's do things as we're used to do. That's more sort of a human, just to go with the flow, right?
Yeah, And the other popular thing I've seen around pushback is that maybe they've been a part of an implementation before that didn't go so well or wasn't executed in a proper way. So, in those cases, you want to, kind of hug them and say, "Hey, who hurt you?" But I think that's the point. You really want to get to where their pain is and where the pushback is coming from. What's kind of motivating that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. We've been talking about that a couple of weeks ago with you. It's I also noticed that sometimes if you have this negative experience in the past with Agile, it was maybe done wrong, or the change was orchestrated in the wrong way, then you will get this pushback, right? So it is there, it's natural, right? How do we deal with them? How do you deal with it? I don't know what could be the practices. How to come to those that are just afraid of change and want to do things in the old ways, and how to come to those who are had this negative experience maybe in the past.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it kind of depends on if it's a top-down implementation or bottom-up, or if if it's some kind of hybrid thing. So really, I mean, from top-down, if it's management that's driving this, or from the IT management side, you really want to kind of, I think either perspective, you really want to get into what they aim to accomplish and what the intent is. And I think if it's just delivering things. That's maybe not a good enough reason. You want to dig a little deeper and double click on that, because you can deliver a lot of things poorly.
Yeah.
So, and that's something I hear, hey, we're an Agile organization. We do this. We've done this for a while. We don't need to focus on this because we're already doing it. And this continuous improvement mindset and the empirical process and all of these pillars of Agile practice are really important long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, and the ones that had a negative experience, I mean, you mentioned before, maybe hug them and ask them who hurt you, basically. But how to show that it's another angle, maybe the right way to do, and I think it's even harder than those cases that sort of see it in the first time, right?
Yeah.
Experience it in the first time, because you basically, in this case, you just need to manage the uncertainty, and that you need to overcome the bad experience already there. Anything specific?
I think if you can get them to articulate kind of what their goals are and why they want to go to this, why they want to go through this transformation or adopt a scaling framework or whatever it is, the intended outcome is, and really dig into the reason why they want to do that. Do they want to come to market faster? Do they want to innovate more? Do they want to be more predictable? Do they want higher quality? These kind of things. And then we can speak directly into those pain points. I think getting to know your customer or getting to know the client is very important in understanding what they want to accomplish. So, I think those that I've experienced that have had bad experiences are not really clear on that. They think that they should be doing Agile for some reason. It'll be better. But the management decides to go do Agile, and they go off into a corner, and then they're surprised when it doesn't work, and they're not engaged in the process. As stakeholders. So,
but that's an important angle. Actually, you mentioned that it's it's a difference when it's top down, bottom up, and so which approach? I probably it's not that it's one or the other. It's better or worse, right? But it's different. So how do you see what it's more important when you go top down and when you go bottom up? What are the main things then to avoid this pushback, to not get into that situation from the first?
Yeah, and I think in my career I've been a part of 8 different transformations at this point, and the one that in my mind that I deem as the most successful one was kind of a hybrid of both approaches. I think it started actually from the development team. They were working in an environment that was not sustainable, so they were burned out, and they weren't happy about their jobs, and they were constantly chasing these deadlines and these Gantt charts and all these things. So. They were looking for a solution for this. They wanted to enjoy their work again. But then they were able to kind of negotiate that with the management and say, hey, look, this, so once they got the management on board, then it became kind of top down. But it really was a grassroots kind of evolution. And it was really kind of the perfect environment for that at the time, when they had a change in leadership and they were willing to try new things. And I know it's kind of a cliche answer, but if you could do both, it's probably ideal in my experience. Yeah, and I've been the one that I would say was not as successful, or the least successful out of those 8, was one that was really driven from the top down. And it was kind of like I mentioned earlier. They said, yeah, we need to do this agile thing. I've heard about this scaling framework, so go out and do this thing. We did it at my old company. It should work here. And then they left it alone. So we didn't get a lot of top end. It didn't become a mindset. It didn't become part of the culture and those kind of things. So that one really, really floundered. It took a lot of time to get momentum for this one.
Yeah, I can relate to that experience as well. I believe I also had a transformation similar. The difference maybe was that it's actually, it was hyping a lot, doing a lot of communication before the official, transformation, day one and everything. And people were, they had their concerns, but at the same time, they were hyped. They were sort of, okay, when it's interesting to see what that will bring, right? Could be better, could be worse. But it came from top down, a lot of communication, preparation, training schedules, and everything, being put down. And then at the same time, when it was launched, basically you don't see the example from the top managers, right? And that is where it hurts, because people are looking for that, right? After the change, they look into the seniors and say, okay, so how do you do that?
Right.
And it's not only, that the coaches need to guide them, but basically the leadership needs to guide them, right? And this is running into the corner is a problem.
Yeah, that's right. And we work with very, very smart people, as you know. So it's, and they see through that, right? So, and especially if you're in an organization that's been through multiple agile transformations or things like that, they're like, okay, this is just another marketing thing, or this is some, that.
Let's live through that.
Yeah, well, let's do this. It'll be
the same.
Yeah, right. So. Yeah, and that's right. They see right through that. If it's not ingrained in the culture and it's not really a pivot as far as the change in the organization goes, and it's not supported at that top level, then I think it's not destined for success at that point, I think.
But getting back to those unsuccessful experience or bad experience, and to the team level or even individual level, like we have, let's say, a team which consists of amount of people, and majority of them had been through that bad experience or something, right? And they just push back just because this is not going to work.
Right.
That's the mindset. Okay, I've tried it. I've seen it. This is not going to work. I'm not going to, why you want to change it? And then you can bring those pain points, as you mentioned, that maybe we need to be, better quality, faster, more focused to the client. But they see, okay, I think we're fast enough, we're qualitative enough. Right. Why would we need to do this change? I know that if we move to Agile, nothing changes.
Yeah, right.
Basically, how do you approach those people then, basically?
Yeah, so I think and this may be true in some industries. I don't know if you're in a mature industry with not a lot of competition and not a lot of stress and market conditions, then maybe you don't have to. But I don't know of a company like that. So especially in larger organizations where if you're first to market, then you can capture this market share and these different things, or if your product is really built around quality and being predictable and those kind of things, it's really kind of a different mindset. So I think as you get into those things, these different mindsets, it's a different focus from the management level and a different level of engagement through there. So, yeah.
Another case that could be sort of a pushbacks I've seen actually lately, a team that's, senior team working using their practices. They're saying they have commitments, they deliver on those commitments, majority of them in time with the quality expected and so on. So basically don't have much of a, let's say, problems delivery-wise, right? But then you come and see as a coach that you can basically make some improvements. But the comments that you get when you come, so okay, we don't want to, do this more processes or, different processes. We adopted the process to ourselves, and we're good with deliveries. No one's complaining.
Right.
We're fine. As much as concerns PO is happy, let's say, right? And stakeholders are happy. But you see that you can, sort of push even further.
Right.
Right. The team can become even better. They can be, deliver the value more incrementally. Right. Or maybe structure their own work better so that they're less stressed there and there, even though they're happy technically, right? So, then basically the pushback of living with the status quo, even in the Agile, right? We're Agile, right? We're using practices, we're partly Agile, but we're lived up with that we're good enough and we don't want to go beyond.
Yeah.
how to try to work with these kind of people. Did he had any experience?
Yeah, so the most successful way, and not all industries kind of lend themselves to this, but and it kind of goes back to your first question as well about the, this continuous improvement mindset and having this kind of mindset. And I think if you ever get to that point where you think, yeah, we're as good as we can get, that's a warning sign, right? And so I think there's always room for improvement and to learn more, and especially in the state of technology. I mean, there's always going to be new technology. There's going to be bigger, better, faster ways to do things. So I think if you ever get complacent in that way, then you're less competitive. So back to your question, the times when I've been most successful at that is when I can tie those to metrics, which is kind of hard. And the example I like to give is I worked in a large pizza company in the United States, and a really, really fun place to work. But the good thing about that place was you had direct, you could see on a daily or nearly hourly basis about the impact of the changes you were making, right? So you had real live data to make decisions on. And so having that data really drove a lot of decisions. So especially now as your organization goes through these objectives and key results, these OKRs and things, and really tying those to a quantifiable measure, so you can see if you're moving the needle or not. And then you can see, and tracking the right metrics and things. So, a good scenario is, okay, maybe we want to reduce the number of defects, or we want to reduce our cycle time, or we want to reduce, the number of effort hours it takes to implement a feature, or these kind of things. These are all things that that you can measure, and that really helps with that argument. Or that conversation. And the second thing, I think one of the most powerful tools that we as Agile coaches have in our toolbox is this the spirit of experimentation, right? And having this kind of mindset where, hey, let's just try this for a period of time as an experiment. And that's a lot less threatening and a lot easier for them to buy on to, the team to buy into, than we're going to do this change forever and ever. So, hey, this is the expected outcome. Let's just see if it works. And let's try this for a sprint or two. And that's a lot more palatable to see, and then you can see if you're moving the needle if you have these metrics behind. So
I agree. The experiments is always the things that you can propose, right? It's like let's just try it. Right? It never hurts, even though I've seen that sometimes we're trying it artificially, even though people are like, okay, let's try it, but I don't believe in this, so I won't put much of an effort of myself. Lately, what I've been doing, I've been had a chance to work with one of the OKR coaches and consultants, one of the top consultants in Europe, and he was saying that also within OKR transformations, he was saying like, okay, I don't just want you to try, I want you to give an honest try,
right?
And then we'll pull back. If you tried honestly, hard, you used it, then it doesn't work. I mean, then it doesn't work, right? And then we pull back. So just give an honest try. He was saying.
That's a good point, because I think that's where a lot of that experimentation fails. And we tried the experiments, but there's not that real clean retro at the end where you really use the empirical process and use the things that you learned. And it's hard to say, especially if you are a leader and you got buy-in for this, and we tried this experiment, and it's hard to say that didn't work. Maybe we shouldn't do that again, because at some points that might be viewed as a failure or whatever. And that's why I say it needs to be really ingrained in the culture that, hey, this is something we do. Sometimes we're going to fail, but we'll fail fast, fail small, and then and learn from that and make it better next time.
You're mentioning culture quite a lot. But how to ingrain it in this culture, right? Let's say we have an organization that's, corporate mindset, old school, waterfall, plans, budgets, projects, right? So how to start putting this mindset in, right? This culture in. Where would you start, basically?
Yeah. So one of the transformations I went through, it was a large fintech company that I worked in the United States, and they weren't agile by and large. They had some pockets through acquisition. There were some in different cities. They had some pockets of agile, but no general practice around that. And the subsidiary that I worked for, there were no agile teams, no Scrum teams at all. But we decided, our team decided, hey, this might be good for us. It might be a good way of working for us. And so, to answer your question in a short way, I would say start small. Is a good way to do it if you have that luxury. So we did it with one team, and then we had some empirical evidence, right? We said, hey, this was really successful. We were able to reduce our defects, and we reduced our cycle time from 1 month to to 2 days, or whatever. I don't remember the exact statistics, but we had some success stories to tell from that, and we learned some things along the way. And along the way, we were bringing more leaders on board, and because we had these successes and we had these information radiators, we were sharing that information out to the organizations, and it became widely adopted. And so now across the whole enterprise, what you would think is a fairly mature agile organization now.
We had a podcast last season where we talked about agile in corporations and large, old, long history companies. And I remember that the person I've been talking with, others, is basically said that how they did it is that don't focus on the ones that don't want to do it, right? So focus on the ones that are willing to try, and then show the example. And then the ones that didn't want to do it, they come back and say, okay, I would like to be on board, right?
Right. So I wish I'd have heard that when I was a young coach or an aspiring, Scrum Master, because I think that's maybe a trap or an anti-pattern that we fall into as young, because we want to beat people over the head with the Scrum guide or with a framework or something like this. But I think that's one thing you learn through having been through that sometime. That's really, really sage advice. To really focus on those that have the energy to do that and the wherewithal to do it, and then others will come on board as late adopters. So,
Also, on the same note, it's a good question actually. You mentioned the Scrum book, and there are those sort of let's say the views of how to introduce Agile, and one approach is saying that start doing everything by the book, right? The Sugary principles and everything. Right. Do as the rules say. Right, and then you will learn, and then you flex things out and make pivots wherever you feel right. However, there is another approach where you sort of try to adapt from the get-go to what works for the team, and say, it's okay. So we're not using Scrum guide. We're just some coach or someone comes and tries to see from the very get-go. Which approach do you think is better? And I know probably there are cases for this and that, but generally, which is your more favorable way?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on the existing level of maturity. So the book answer to there is it depends a lot, like you said. I think the former approach, where the shuhari and learning that way, has a lot of validity with me, and there might be some generational reasons for that. Because I come from a military background, very hierarchical, and I like things kind of in a way. But the thing that I do like about that is that you don't have to lean on your own understanding. You don't have to lean on your implementation. There's a whole body of empirical evidence out there to say, okay, other companies have been through this. We're not recreating the wheel here. This is what they learned, and so you don't have to start at zero. So even in software development, they have these design patterns, and these are the same things that we can translate it. These are lessons that we don't have to learn the hard way necessarily. So I buy into that principle quite a bit. Understanding, why you're doing things is very important, and I think that's where we fall short as well, especially as a new Scrum Master that doesn't have a lot of experience in different things, because you do things by the book, but maybe you're not doing a lot of thought about why we do those things in the first place. Why are we doing? Why do we do estimation, for example? I mean, why is that something we even do? And we have to do it by story points, and and the Fibonacci sequence, all that you get really ingrained in the mechanics of it without forgetting the reason behind it. So I think that's very important as well as you look at that. So a long answer to your question, but I think I'm more about starting with a good foundation, good basics, depending on your maturity. The other side about that is if you have a very mature team that has some good practices and you take them back to square one, you're gonna get a lot of that pushback, and they're not going to understand or see the value in that. So that's why I kind of leave myself an out there. If it's a very mature team that's worked together in a Scrum fashion before, maybe that's not as important.
Then you just basically look what can be tweaked.
That's right.
Pushed a bit even further. All right. We touched upon also managers, right, and the top manager, and sometimes there is let's say it's bottom up, or it starts somewhere as a project in the middle, by some crazy people in the company. And the ones that needs to be persuaded is the top management, right? Let's go this agile way. And we know that usually, there could be, of course, examples of companies, maybe larger ones, where you can pocket it out and make it work, and not say the whole company, but generally you will feel the whole effect if it's, as you say, the culture in the entire organization. But then we need to get, the top managers on board. And they, also probably come from, the management background, which is, give me plans, we need to structure budgets, and our board is asking for that, the CEO asking for this and that, right? And we need to report and all of those things. But how to persuade them to come to use these agile practices, right? To embrace the culture, basically.
Yeah, so I'll give an example from one transformation that I worked on. It was a larger team, 250 people on the team, geographically dispersed. And I had a conversation with the CEO, and we're making recommendations for the design of the teams and things. So, and we're talking about Scrum Masters and Agile coaches and this thing. So I'm being asked to justify, why do we need 8 Agile coaches or Scrum Masters for this team? And so, how we broke it down is, and it's really kind of practical. I see an implementation kind of goes in 3 phases. There's you have to get everybody onboarded, upskilling and all these things. And then you transition into the execution part, and then it becomes an improvement kind of things and sustaining the machine once you get it running. So, and that's kind of walking through those phases. I said, I think it's, it's pretty labor intensive up front, but if we hire good Agile coaches and Scrum Masters, then we become less, maybe not as many people we need going forward, because we're more mature as an organization. And so for the rollout, the upskilling, all that, we're going to need it's intensive, especially depending on the maturity. And this was a very varied maturity across the teams. So, I think, just, understanding kind of the phases of that and what the evolution of that looks like. And I think through that, and, having been through that before, that built some credibility with him. And so specifically around, this is where we add value at each of those different stages. So, breaking it down into consumable chunks and really articulating what the value is there. So, and then that kind of naturally led into the discussion about, the difference between Agile Coach and Scrum Master and different things. So, so we got into some of the mechanics of it, to see where the rubber meets the road. So, just understanding the scope of that, I think, and understanding kind of, the different challenges that we face at each of those kind of bite-sized chunks made it easier.
Yeah, but you also need to work with the individuality and the personality of the manager, right? He also not only needs to approve and, let's say, agree that this is an investment, right? You probably need to, put on some money, maybe hire additional people or anything beforehand, and you see the results afterwards. So this is like a business logic that's still, the manager, he will understand, he or she will understand, right? But then, a person also needs to learn to live in the Agile and sort of run the company in the Agile fashion. That he or she needs to understand that it will be less reporting done. Go around and go into the demos and see what's cooking in the teams yourself. Check the boards, check there, and no one's sending you huge reports. Not detailed project plans, but maybe some just gates or milestones that you basically say, or product teams, not projects anymore, and these kind of things, which is also hard technically to change a person to change his probably tens of years of experience running the company in a completely different way. There's also a challenge, as I see.
Especially, like you said, even if that manager or that leader's been there a long time, the organization might have been around even longer. So, back to your point, I mean, just the way that they do budgeting and approach budgeting in a very basic level is different in an Agile kind of environment than it is in like a feature-driven environment or something like this. So, understanding kind of, it goes back to kind of understanding their pain and kind of what their concerns are and where they are. I've had the privilege of working with most of those senior leaders once they've decided to go through a transformation, or at least philosophically on board with an Agile approach to that. So a lot of that heavy lifting has already been done a lot of times. But that's the kind of the reactions that you get is, how is it, why is this just hype? Is this just something of the latest phase? Or, they're really showing them where the value is, and being able to develop incrementally and pivot and make changes and react to market conditions and all these things that Agile is really known for is really kind of where it drives it home. So, yeah, a good example, I worked with a large insurance company in the United States, health insurance company, and when we started there, they were traditional project management. They did 2 releases a year. So one time I remember specifically, we spent a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of man months on developing these features and we found out 6 months later that nobody even wanted. The market had changed, and so we worked for 6 months basically for nothing. So, and if you think about the scale of that, I mean, it was a large organization. There were probably 200 people on this team, and that's a lot of wasted time and effort. So, to really, when they saw the value of Agile, say, what do you mean we can do this, and we can pivot, we can change these things, more than twice a year, and things. So. That really was kind of a light bulb for them, and they're one of the most agile organizations. They're kind of a benchmark Fortune 100 company now, so they're big.
Sounds exciting. Yeah. Sounds cool. All right, really a lot of interesting things to talk about. I'm just cautious about the time, trying to look so that I believe we can continue this discussion for hours. Sure. A lot of good examples and experiences you have. But thank you for coming to talk on our couch. I believe a lot of good insights, a lot of good practical experience that you shared. Yes, and good luck to you in your future endeavors.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
See you.